The alien council gasped and scurried backwards in abject terror as the human prisoner broke free of his shackles and leapt onto the table, murder gleaming in his eyes. "This cannot be," hissed Admiral Kren of the Zorgax. "Your species was deemed inferior. You were to be our slaves." Captain Jack Hartman of the United Earth Space Force grinned ferally. His ship, the Intrepid, had been captured by the massive Zorgax invasion fleet. Their mission was conquest, to crush humanity beneath their heel. But Jack and his crew would rather die than submit. "Guess you aliens never learned rule number 1 about humans," Jack spat, cracking his knuckles. "We don't fucking surrender." The Zorgax Council trembled, their plan unraveling before their eyes. Jack knew he had to escape, get back to his ship, and stop this invasion at all costs. The survival of Earth and all humanity depended on him. He lunged for the nearest alien's throat. Back on Earth, chaos reigned supreme. The news of the incoming Zorgax invasion fleet spread like wildfire, igniting a global frenzy of fear and panic. People flooded the streets, desperate for answers, for some glimmer of hope in the face of annihilation. Grocery store shelves were stripped bare as families hoarded supplies, preparing for the worst. Riots erupted in major cities, the authorities struggling to maintain a semblance of order amidst the mayhem. In the halls of power, world leaders convened emergency meetings. Their faces etched with grim determination, they argued and debated, each proposing their own strategies to counter the alien threat. But old rivalries and political divides reared their ugly heads, undermining any attempt at a unified front. Precious time was wasted as egos clashed and agendas collided, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. Captain Jack Hartman wasted no time. He pushed the Intrepid to its limits, racing towards the secret Space Force base hidden on the dark side of the moon. As they approached, Jack could see the sprawling complex carved into the lunar rock, its gleaming domes and towering antennae, a testament to humanity's ingenuity and resilience. The Intrepid touched down on the landing pad, and Jack strode down the ramp, his jaw set with fierce determination. Waiting for him was General Victor Graves, a grizzled veteran with piercing eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Captain Hartman," Graves greeted him with a curt nod. "Glad you made it in one piece. We've got a hell of a fight on our hands." "That's putting it mildly, sir," Jack replied, falling into step beside the general as they entered the base. "What's the situation?" Graves led him into a high-tech command center, its walls lined with screens displaying real-time data on the approaching Zorgax fleet. "It's not good, Captain. Their ships outnumber us 10-1, and their technology is light years ahead of ours. We're outgunned and outmatched in every way." Jack studied the screens, his mind racing. "There's got to be something we can do. We can't just roll over and let them take Earth without a fight." Graves nodded, a glint of determination in his eye. "Agreed, and that's where you come in, Captain. We've been working on a secret weapon, a massive energy cannon that can take out an entire Zorgax ship with a single shot." Jack's eyes widened. "That's incredible, sir. Where is it?" "It's here on the base, but it's still untested. We don't know if it will work when we need it most." Graves paused, his expression grave. "And even if it does, we'll need time to charge it up between shots. That's where you and the Intrepid come in." Jack leaned forward, his heart pounding with anticipation. "What's the plan, General?" "We need you to buy us time, Captain. I want you to take the Intrepid and infiltrate the Zorgax fleet, sabotage their ships from within, cause as much chaos and confusion as you can. Every minute you can give us is another minute we have to get the cannon operational." Jack nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "I have an idea, sir. If we can get close enough to their command ship, we might be able to take out their leadership. That could throw their whole invasion into disarray." Graves clapped him on the shoulder, a fierce grin spreading across his face. "That's the kind of thinking we need, Captain. You have my full authorization to do whatever it takes to stop these alien bastards. The survival of Earth depends on you." Jack saluted, his resolve hardening into an unbreakable will. "I won't let you down, sir. The Zorgax won't know what hit them." As he strode back towards the Intrepid, Jack knew that the fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, but he was ready for the challenge. He would fight to his last breath to defend his home, his people, and everything he held dear. The Zorgax had no idea what they were up against. They had never faced an enemy like humanity before, and they were about to learn the hard way. What happens when you mess with the wrong species? Captain Jack Hartman gripped the controls of the captured Zorgax scout ship, his knuckles white with tension. Behind him, his hand-picked team of Space Force operatives checked their weapons and gear, their faces etched with grim determination. They all knew the stakes. The fate of Earth and all of humanity rested on their shoulders. As the scout ship approached the massive Zorgax flagship, Jack's heart pounded in his chest. The alien vessel was a behemoth, bristling with weapons and armor. It seemed impossible that their tiny ship could slip past its defenses undetected. But Jack had a few tricks up his sleeve. He'd spent hours studying the Zorgax language and technology, looking for any weakness he could exploit, and he'd found one, a small gap in their sensor array that would allow them to sneak aboard undetected. With a deft twist of the controls, Jack guided the scout ship through the gap, holding his breath as they passed mere meters from the flagship's hull. The ship shuddered as it slipped through the energy barrier, but then they were inside, gliding silently through the cavernous hangar bay. As soon as they touched down, Jack and his team sprang into action. They moved quickly and quietly through the ship's corridors, planting explosives at key junctures, the weapons control room, the engine room, the shield generator. Jack's heart raced as he worked, knowing that every second counted. But then, just as they were about to plant the final charge, alarms began to blare throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and Zorgax soldiers poured into the corridors, their weapons drawn. "Shit," Jack muttered, yanking his blaster from its holster. "We've been made. Take cover." All hell broke loose as the humans and Zorgax exchanged fire, energy bolts sizzling through the air. Jack and his team fought bravely, using their superior tactics and training to outmaneuver the aliens. They ducked and weaved, using the ship's architecture to their advantage, picking off Zorgax soldiers one by one. But the aliens kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. Jack gritted his teeth as he fired his blaster again and again, watching his team members fall one by one. They were being overwhelmed, and he knew it. Just as it seemed all hope was lost, Jack's hand closed around the detonator. He locked eyes with his remaining team members, seeing the determination and sacrifice in their faces. They nodded, ready to do what needed to be done. With a roar of defiance, Jack triggered the explosives. The ship bucked and shuddered as the charges detonated, ripping through its vital systems. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and Zorgax soldiers were hurled off their feet. The flagship listed heavily to one side, its engines sputtering and dying. In the chaos, Jack and his surviving team members fought their way back to the scout ship. More explosions rocked the flagship as they leapt aboard, sealing the hatch behind them. "Go, go, go," Jack shouted, throwing himself into the pilot's seat. The scout ship roared to life, blasting out of the hangar bay just as another explosion tore through the flagship's hull. As they sped away, Jack could see the massive ship listing and foundering, flames erupting from its shattered hull. The Zorgax fleet was thrown into disarray, their commanders scrambling to regroup in the face of this unexpected attack. Jack let out a shaky breath, hardly able to believe they had pulled it off. The flagship was crippled and the Zorgax advance had been stalled. They had bought Earth precious time to ready its defenses and mount a counterattack. But Jack knew this was only the beginning. The Zorgax would not be defeated so easily, and many hard battles lay ahead. Earth's survival was far from assured. Still, as he looked around at his battered but unbroken team, Jack felt a surge of pride and determination. They had struck the first blow against the alien invaders and shown them that humanity would not go down without a fight. No matter what challenges lay ahead, Jack knew one thing for certain. He and his fellow humans would never stop fighting for their home and their freedom. The battle for Earth had only just begun. On the surface of the moon, General Graves stood in the command center of the secret Space Force base, his eyes locked on the massive screen displaying the approaching Zorgax fleet. The energy cannon, Earth's last hope, was finally ready to be deployed. Graves clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest as he gave the order. "Fire the cannon!" A low hum filled the air as the cannon began to charge, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Seconds later, a blinding beam of pure energy erupted from the cannon's barrel, streaking across the void of space towards the Zorgak's armada. The beam struck the heart of the alien fleet, and the effect was immediate. Dozens of ships were instantly vaporized, their hulls disintegrating under the onslaught of raw power. The remaining Zorgak's vessels reeled in shock, their formations thrown into disarray. In the command ship of the Zorgak's fleet, Admiral Kren slammed his fist on the console, his eyes blazing with fury. Impossible! How could the humans possess such a weapon? But there was no time for questions. Kren knew he had to act fast or risk losing the entire invasion. All ships concentrate fire on the human cannon. We must destroy it before they can strike again. The Zorgak's fleet surged forward, their weapons charging as they prepared to unleash hell on the humans. In the skies above Earth, the battle raged with renewed intensity. Human fighters darted and weaved among the alien ships, their pilots pushing their craft to the limit. The Zorgaks responded with a hail of laser fire, filling the air with deadly energy beams. Captain Hartman, having just escaped the crippled Zorgak's flagship, plunged into the fray with his squadron at his back. "All right, people, let's show these alien bastards what we're made of," he barked into the comm. Hartman's fighters tore into the Zorgak's ships, using their speed and agility to outmaneuver the lumbering alien craft. They fired their weapons with pinpoint accuracy, targeting weak points in the enemy's armor and sending more than one Zorgak's ship spinning out of control. But for every ship they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The Zorgaks pressed their attack, their superior numbers slowly but surely pushing the human forces back. In the command center, General Graves watched the battle unfold with growing concern. The energy cannon was recharging, but it would be minutes before it could fire again. Minutes they didn't have. Graves opened a channel to Captain Hartman. "Jack, we need you to buy us more time. The cannon is almost ready for another shot, but we're cut down before we can fire." Hartman gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He knew what Graves was asking of him. A suicide mission to draw the Zorgaks away from the cannon, but what choice did they have? "Understood, General," Hartman replied, his voice steady. "We'll give you the time you need." Hartman switched to the squadron's frequency. "Listen up, people. We've got one chance to save Earth, and it's all on us. We're going to dive straight into the heart of the Zorgak's fleet, hit them with everything we've got. We'll buy the cannon the time it needs, no matter what it takes." There was a moment of silence on the comm, then a chorus of voices. "We're with you, Captain." Hartman felt a surge of pride for his squadron, for their bravery and sacrifice. They were the best of the best, and he knew they would not fail. "All right, then," he said, his voice grim. "Let's go give 'em hell." With a roar of engines, Hartman's squadron plunged into the heart of the Zorgak's fleet, weapons blazing. They wove through the alien ships, drawing their fire away from the cannon and the main human fleet. The Zorgaks swarmed around them, like angry hornets defending their nest. Laser beams crisscrossed the void, and explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Hartman's fighters took hit after hit, their shields failing and hulls buckling under the onslaught. One by one his squadron mates fell, their ships blossoming into fireballs that quickly winked out in the cold of space. Hartman felt each loss like a knife to the heart, but he pushed the pain aside. They had a job to do, and he would be damned if he let their sacrifices be in vain. On the lunar surface, the energy cannon finished its recharge cycle. General Graves watched the screen, his heart in his throat as he saw Hartman's squadron being cut to pieces. "Cannon is ready to fire, sir," a technician reported. Graves nodded, his jaw set. "Target the center of the Zorgak's fleet and fire at will." The cannon roared to life once more, its beam lancing out into space. It struck the Zorgak's fleet like the fist of an angry god, vaporizing a dozen ships in a heartbeat. The aliens reeled, their advance faltering in the face of this new onslaught. But still they came on, determined to crush the humans once and for all. Hartman and his few remaining squadmates fought like demons, taking down ship after ship, but they were hopelessly outnumbered, and their own craft were on the verge of falling apart. Hartman's fighter shuddered as another volley of laser fire struck his shields. Warning lights flashed on his console, and he knew he couldn't take much more punishment. "General, we can't hold them off much longer," he shouted into the comm, his voice ragged with fatigue and desperation. "Please tell me the cannon is ready to fire again." In the command center, Graves watched helplessly as the cannon began its agonizingly slow recharge cycle. They were out of time, and he knew it. "Negative, Captain," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "The cannon needs another 3 minutes to recharge. You've done all you can. Fall back to the main fleet. We'll cover your retreat." But Hartman knew there would be no retreat. The Zorgax had them surrounded, and they were closing in for the kill. He looked around at his battered squadron, seeing the determination and the fear in their eyes. "No, General," he said, his voice calm and clear. "We're not falling back. We're going to finish this once and for all." With a final battle cry, Hartman and his squadron hurled themselves at the Zorgax ships, firing every weapon they had. They wove and dodged through the enemy fire, their ships disintegrating around them as they pushed deeper into the alien formation. And then, just as all seemed lost, a miracle happened. The Zorgax ships began to falter, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. Hartman watched in disbelief as one after another the alien craft started to drift aimlessly, their engines shutting down and lights flickering out. "What the hell is happening?" he demanded, hardly daring to hope. General Graves' voice crackled over the comm, tight with emotion. "It's the virus, Jack, the one we planted in their systems when you were aboard their flagship. It's finally taken effect. Their ships are shutting down, their weapons are offline. We've won." Hartman felt a surge of elation, mixed with grief for all those who had fallen. The battle was over and Earth was safe, but the cost had been high, and he knew they would be feeling the losses for a long time to come. As the last of the Zorgax ships drifted lifelessly in space, Hartman and his surviving squadmates limped back to the lunar base, their ships battered and scarred. They had done the impossible, had faced down an alien armada, and emerged victorious. But even as they celebrated their hard-won triumph, Hartman knew that this was only the beginning. The Zorgax had been defeated, but there were sure to be other threats out there, other enemies who would seek to conquer and destroy. Earth would need to be ready, would need to stand united in the face of whatever challenges lay ahead, and Hartman knew that he and his fellow Space Force operatives would be there, ready to defend their home and their people, no matter the cost. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for humanity's survival had only just begun. Captain Jack Hartman stared at the view screen, his heart sinking as he watched the Zorgax ships continue their relentless advance. The human fleet was in shambles, their numbers dwindling with each passing moment. The energy cannon had bought them some time, but it wasn't enough. Earth's defenses were on the verge of collapse and they were running out of options. Jack clenched his fists, his mind racing as he tried to come up with a plan. And then it hit him, a desperate, crazy idea that just might work. He turned to his crew, his eyes blazing with determination. "Listen up, people," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I have a plan, but it's a one-way trip. I need volunteers, people who are willing to sacrifice everything to save Earth." There was a moment of silence, then a chorus of voices. Every member of his crew stepped forward, their faces set with grim resolve. Jack felt a surge of pride and gratitude for their bravery. "All right, then," he said, nodding. "Here's the plan. We've got a prototype weapon, something the eggheads back home have been working on for years. They call it the Singularity Bomb. If we can get it into the heart of the Zorgax fleet and detonate it, it'll create a miniature black hole that will swallow up every last one of those alien bastards." His crew exchanged glances, their eyes widening as they realized what he was proposing. "But, sir," one of them said, "if we detonate that thing, we'll be caught in the blast too. There's no way we'll survive." Jack nodded, his jaw tight. I know, but if we don't do this, Earth is doomed. We're the only ones who can end this here and now. He looked around at his crew, seeing the fear and determination in their eyes. They were the best of the best, and he knew they would follow him to the end. Let's gear up and get ready, he said, his voice firm. We launch in 10 minutes. As his crew scrambled to prepare for the mission, Jack made his way to the comm station. He needed to inform General Graves of their plan, and to say his goodbyes. Jack, what the hell are you doing? Graves demanded as soon as he appeared on the screen. You can't seriously be considering this. We don't have a choice, Victor, Jack said, using the General's first name for the first time. The Zorgaks are going to overrun us any minute now. This is the only way to stop them. Graves was silent for a long moment, his face etched with pain and understanding. I know, he said finally, his voice heavy. But there's something you need to know, Jack. Something we just learned about the Zorgaks. Jack frowned, leaning closer to the screen. What is it? They're not invading us for conquest or glory or any of the usual reasons, Graves said. Their own homeworld was destroyed, Jack. Some kind of cataclysm that wiped out their entire civilization. They're coming to Earth because they need a new planet to survive on. Jack stared at the screen, his mind reeling. The Zorgaks weren't conquerors, they were refugees. Desperate, terrified refugees who had lost everything. And now, he was about to condemn them to extinction. He sat back in his chair, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision before him. Could he really go through with this, knowing what he knew now? Could he sacrifice his own life and the lives of his crew to save humanity, even if it meant wiping out an entire species in the process? General, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, I don't know what to do. Graves looked at him with sympathy, his own eyes glistening with tears. I can't make this decision for you, Jack, but I can tell you this. You're the finest officer I've ever served with, and the bravest man I know. Whatever you choose, I'll stand behind you. Jack nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. He looked around at his crew, seeing their faces etched with the same anguish and uncertainty that he felt. And then, in that moment, he knew what he had to do. He turned back to the screen, his eyes blazing with determination. General, I need you to do something for me. I need you to open a channel to the Zorgaks fleet. I want to speak to their leader directly. Graves frowned, confused. What are you going to say to them, Jack? Jack took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. I'm going to offer them a choice, a chance to end this without any more bloodshed, and if they refuse, then we'll do what we have to do. He stood up, his eyes locked on the view screen as the Zorgak ships loomed ever closer. Patch me through, General. Let's end this, one way or another. Graves nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. A moment later, the screen flickered and the face of Admiral Kren appeared, his reptilian eyes narrowed with suspicion. What is the meaning of this, human? He hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. Have you called to beg for mercy? Jack met his gaze unflinchingly. No, Admiral, I've called to offer you a choice. I know about your homeworld, about what happened to your people, and I'm giving you a chance to end this without any more death. Kren's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly regained his composure. And what is this choice, human? Jack took a deep breath. Leave Earth now and never return. Find another planet to colonize, one that isn't already inhabited. We'll give you the coordinates of a few promising systems, ones that could support your people. You can start over, build a new home for yourselves. Kren hissed in anger. And if we refuse, if we choose to take your world by force, as is our right? Jack's eyes hardened. Then we'll have no choice but to stop you, Admiral. We have a weapon, one that could wipe out your entire fleet in a single blast, and we're prepared to use it, even if it means sacrificing our own lives in the process. There was a long, tense silence as Kren glared at Jack, his clawed fingers tapping against the arm of his chair. Finally, he spoke. You would do this, human? You would condemn your own people to death just to stop us? Jack nodded, his voice unwavering. I would, Admiral, Because the survival of my species is more important than my own life or the lives of my crew. We'll do whatever it takes to protect our home." Kren was silent for a long moment, his eyes boring into Jack's. And then, to Jack's amazement, he threw back his head and laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the comlink. "You humans," he said, shaking his head, "you never cease to surprise me. Very well, Captain, we will accept your offer. Give us the coordinates, and we will leave your world in peace." Jack felt a surge of relief, mixed with disbelief. He had never expected the Zorgax to actually agree to his proposal. He quickly rattled off a series of coordinates, his heart pounding with each word. "You have my word, Admiral," he said when he was finished. "We will not pursue you or seek retribution for what has happened here today. All we ask is that you honor your end of the bargain." Kren nodded, his eyes glinting with something that might have been respect. "We will, Captain. You have shown yourself to be a worthy adversary and a being of honor. Perhaps there is hope for your species after all." With that, the screen went blank, and Jack slumped back in his chair, his body shaking with exhaustion and relief. He turned to his crew, seeing the same emotions reflected in their faces. "We did it," he said softly. "We saved Earth, and we did it without condemning another species to extinction." There were tears in their eyes as they embraced each other, their laughter mixing with sobs of relief. They had stared death in the face and emerged victorious, not through violence but through compassion and understanding. And as the Zorgax ships began to turn away from Earth, their engines flaring as they prepared to jump to hyperspace, Jack knew that this was a moment that would be remembered for generations to come. A moment when humanity had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be alive. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support me, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And for every comment that says, "I liked the story," I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.